I've spent 23 years studying the Sonoran Desert ecosystem, and I thought I'd seen everything. At 47, my knees complained more than they used to, but my eyes remained sharp for the subtle signs of wildlife behavior that most people missed. That October morning started like hundreds before it. My pre-dawn departure from the research station, field pack loaded with water and equipment, ready for another survey along the canyon trails. The temperature was already climbing toward 90 degrees by 7 a.m., typical for southern Arizona autumn. I'd hiked about 2 miles when I first noticed the Coyote Pup. He was small, maybe 12 weeks old, watching me from behind a creosote bush with enormous dark eyes. Coyote pups aren't uncommon, though they usually stay close to their dens and family groups. This one was alone, which immediately concerned me. I stopped, keeping my distance, observing his behavior. He didn't run. Instead, he took several tentative steps toward me, stopped, looked back over his shoulder, then looked at me again. The behavior struck me as odd, neither fearful nor aggressive, but purposeful somehow. I documented the sighting in my field notes and continued hiking, expecting him to disappear back into the desert. 10 minutes later, I glanced back. The pup was following me, maintaining a distance of about 30 feet, his small body navigating the rocky terrain with determination. Something in my gut tightened with unease. This wasn't normal wildlife behavior. I stopped walking and turned to face the pup fully. In all my years of fieldwork, I'd learned to trust my instincts about animal behavior, and everything about this situation felt wrong. The pup stopped too, sitting down in the dust, his tongue lolling slightly from the heat. He was panting hard, possibly dehydrated. I considered my options carefully. Approaching wild animals, especially canids, violated protocol and could be dangerous. But this pup was clearly in distress, and his persistent following suggested something beyond typical wildlife curiosity. I crouched down, making myself less threatening, and spoke softly. The pup's ears perked forward. He stood, took 3 steps toward me, then turned and looked back the way we'd come. Then he looked at me again, whined, a high, desperate sound that made my chest ache, and took several steps back the direction he'd come from. He stopped, turned, and stared at me with what I can only describe as pleading eyes. My scientist brain cataloged the behavior. Directional signaling, persistent eye contact, vocalization indicating distress, repeated attempts to engage human attention. My human heart understood something simpler. This baby was asking for help. I pulled out my radio to call the research station, but we were in a dead zone. No signal. I checked my GPS position, marked it, and made a decision that would change everything. I started walking in the direction the pup indicated, and he immediately trotted ahead of me, looking back frequently to ensure I followed. The pup led me off the established trail into rougher terrain, picking his way between cholla cacti and rocky outcroppings with surprising confidence for such a young animal. Every 50 feet or so, he'd stop and look back, waiting until I caught up before continuing. The temperature was climbing toward 95 degrees, and I was going through my water faster than planned. I offered some to the pup by pouring it into my cupped hand. He lapped it desperately, confirming my dehydration concerns, then immediately continued his determined march. We'd traveled maybe half a mile into increasingly difficult terrain when the pup suddenly broke into an awkward run, his puppy legs churning through the dust. He disappeared behind a massive boulder, and I heard him yipping. Not distress calls, but something else. Communication, perhaps. I climbed carefully over the rocks, my field boots finding precarious purchase on the sun-heated stone. What I saw on the other side stopped me cold. A female coyote lay in the narrow shade of an overhanging rock, her body twisted at an unnatural angle. Even from 15 feet away, I could see the steel jaws of a leg trap clamped around her right hind leg, the metal staked into the ground. Illegal traps were an ongoing problem in this region, despite constant enforcement efforts. The mother coyote's eyes tracked me with a mixture of fear and exhaustion. Her sides heaved with labored breathing. How long had she been here? The pup ran to his mother, pressing against her, licking her face with frantic affection. The mother coyote's tail thumped weakly twice, her love for her baby evident even in her suffering. She made no aggressive moves toward me, which was perhaps the most heartbreaking part. She was too weak to defend herself or her pup. I remained motionless, assessing the situation with forced clinical detachment that barely masked my rising emotion. The trap was an old leg-hold style, cruel and indiscriminate. The mother's leg was badly injured, swollen and discolored. She'd probably been caught for at least 24 hours, possibly longer given her condition. Without intervention, she would die here, and the pup was too young to survive alone. My hands shook as I pulled out my satellite phone. Expensive equipment I'd recently added to my field kit for emergencies exactly like this. I called the research station, explained the situation tersely, and gave my GPS coordinates. Then I called the Wildlife Rescue Center in Tucson, speaking with Maria Rodriguez, a veterinarian I'd worked with for years. She asked careful questions about the mother's condition, the trap type, and the pup's behavior. Her voice remained professionally calm, but I heard the underlying concern. She'd dispatch a team immediately, but I was 90 minutes from the nearest road access. Until they arrived, I was this mother's only hope. Maria walked me through what I could do safely. Following Maria's instructions, I approached slowly, talking softly to the mother coyote. Her ears flattened against her head, and a low growl rumbled in her chest, pure instinct overriding her weakness. The pup positioned himself between us, his tiny body trembling but brave, trying to protect his mother even from the human he'd brought to help. I sat down about 10 feet away, making myself small and non-threatening. I pulled out my remaining water and a protein bar from my pack. Slowly, deliberately, I poured water into my collapsible bowl and pushed it toward them, then broke the protein bar into pieces and scattered them nearby. The pup's nose twitched, hunger overcoming fear. He snatched a piece, brought it to his mother's mouth. She took it gently, chewed with effort. Over 30 minutes, I gradually moved closer, earning incremental trust through stillness and soft words. The mother's exhaustion worked in my favor. She simply didn't have energy for sustained defense. Finally, I was close enough to see the trap mechanism clearly. It was worse than I'd thought, the jaws having bitten deep into tissue. My stomach churned with anger at whoever had set this illegal trap, but I pushed the emotion aside. The mother needed me focused. Using a sturdy branch as leverage, I carefully began working to release the trap's spring mechanism. The mother coyote tensed, whined, her pain evident. The pup pressed against her neck, offering what comfort he could. It took 15 minutes of careful manipulation, my hands cramping with effort, before the trap's jaws finally released. The mother coyote yelped as pressure lifted from her crushed leg, then went very still, her breathing shallow. I'd brought a first aid kit designed for fieldwork injuries, never imagining I'd use it on a wild canid. Working as gently as possible, I cleaned the wound with antiseptic, applied antibiotic ointment, and wrapped the leg in gauze to protect it from dirt and infection until the rescue team arrived. The mother tolerated my ministrations with remarkable stoicism, perhaps understanding on some level that I was helping. The pup watched every movement, his intelligent eyes tracking my hands. When I finished, I moved back to my original position, giving them space. The mother tried to stand, made it halfway up before her injured leg collapsed beneath her. She lay back down with a sound that broke my heart, defeat and despair in animal form. I checked my phone. The rescue team was still 45 minutes out. The heat was becoming dangerous, the shade minimal. I repositioned my body to cast more shadow over the mother coyote, sacrificing my own comfort. I gave them more water, watching the pup lap it eagerly before his mother took her turn. In the silence of the desert, with the sun beating down mercilessly, I found myself talking to them, telling them help was coming, that they'd survived the worst, that everything would be okay. The pup eventually curled against his mother's side, exhausted from his heroic journey to find help. Watching him sleep, his small ribs expanding and contracting with each breath, I felt tears finally slip down my sunburned cheeks. This baby had done something extraordinary. Somehow, he'd understood that humans could help, had overcome instinctive fear to track me through miles of desert, had communicated his need with remarkable clarity. How many times had he tried this with other hikers who'd missed his signals or dismissed him as a nuisance? How long had he been attempting this rescue mission before finding me? The questions would probably never be answered, but the weight of what he'd accomplished settled over me with profound respect. I'd spent my career studying animal cognition, documenting examples of intelligence and emotional complexity that many people dismissed or underestimated. But witnessing this pup's problem-solving, his determination, his pure love for his mother, it transcended academic understanding and became something deeply personal. My own mother had died 5 years ago, cancer taking her before I'd said half the things I'd meant to say. Watching this coyote baby fight so desperately to save his mother touched grief I'd been carrying, made it fresh and raw again. But it also reminded me that love transcends species, that the bond between parent and child is one of nature's most powerful forces, worthy of respect and protection regardless of whether it wears fur or skin. The sound of ATVs approaching woke the pup from his exhausted sleep. He jumped up, positioning himself protectively in front of his mother again, his small body tense. I stood waving to signal our location as 2 rescue team members crested the ridge. Maria Rodriguez and a younger technician named James, carrying a specialized transport crate and medical equipment. Relief flooded through me so intensely my knees went weak. Maria took in the scene with one sweeping, professional glance, then immediately went to work. She examined the mother coyote with gentle efficiency, administering pain medication and fluids while James documented the trap for legal evidence. The mother's vital signs were weak but stable. We'd gotten to her in time. The pup growled at the newcomers until I moved closer, speaking softly. He looked at me, seemed to recognize I trusted these humans, and gradually relaxed his guard. The intelligence in his response amazed Maria and James both. Loading the mother coyote into the transport crate proved challenging despite the sedatives Maria administered. The pup became frantic, trying to climb into the crate with her, yipping desperately. Maria made a command decision. She opened the crate and let him in. Mother and baby curled together immediately, the pup pressing his small body against his mother's, visibly calming her. During the 90-minute journey back to the rescue center, I rode in the vehicle with the crate, watching through the mesh sides as the pup maintained constant contact with his mother. At the rescue center, Maria's full examination revealed the extent of the mother coyote's injuries. The leg had sustained severe tissue damage and a fractured bone. Surgery would be necessary, with a recovery period of at least 6 weeks before she could be released back to the wild. Throughout the examination and treatment, the pup remained by his mother's side in the recovery enclosure Maria had prepared. The center's policy typically separated mothers from offspring during intensive treatment. But Maria bent the rules, recognizing that separating them would cause psychological trauma neither needed. I stayed at the center for 3 days, documenting the mother's recovery and the pup's behavior for my research, and to assist with the criminal investigation into the illegal trapping. Game wardens used the trap's location and style to identify a suspect, building a case that would hopefully prevent future incidents. But mostly, I stayed because I couldn't bring myself to leave them. The pup had chosen me, trusted me, and I felt a responsibility that went beyond professional duty. On the 3rd evening, Maria found me sitting outside their enclosure, watching the pup play with a ball, while his mother observed from her resting position. Maria sat beside me, her expression thoughtful. She asked if I'd considered what would happen after the mother's release. The pup had bonded with me during our desert journey in ways that complicated his wild rehabilitation. He approached the enclosure fence when I arrived, showed excitement at my presence, behaviors that suggested imprinting concerns. Maria's words forced me to confront feelings I'd been avoiding. The pup had gotten under my skin in ways no research subject ever had. I was trained to maintain professional distance, to observe without interfering, to respect the boundary between human and wild. But this situation had shattered those boundaries from the moment the pup had first looked at me with those pleading eyes. "Maria, reading my expression accurately, smiled gently. She explained that the center occasionally granted special circumstances permits for educational ambassadors, wild animals who, due to injury or behavioral factors, couldn't be released but could serve important roles teaching people about wildlife. The pup's remarkable intelligence and his already established comfort with humans made him a potential candidate. If I was interested, and if I completed the required training and secured proper permits, I could serve as his guardian. He'd live at my research station, become part of my educational outreach programs, help people understand the complex intelligence of predators often dismissed as pests. The offer stunned me. I'd never considered keeping a wild animal, had always been purist about maintaining appropriate boundaries. But as I watched the pup through the fence, remembering his determination to save his mother, his bravery, his trust, I realized some boundaries were meant to be crossed. Not carelessly, but with purpose and respect. I told Maria I needed time to think, but we both knew I'd already decided. That night, I called my sister, trying to explain what had happened. The 6 weeks of the mother coyote's recovery became a crash course in canid care and behavior modification. I completed required training, secured permits, transformed a section of my research station into appropriate housing, and learned everything I could about raising a coyote pup ethically. The pup, whom I named Scout for his rescue mission heroics, split time between the recovery center and my station, gradually adjusting to his new life. He remained deeply bonded to his mother, but his attachment to me grew stronger, the trust he'd initially shown in the desert deepening into genuine affection. Maria monitored his development carefully, ensuring we maintained appropriate boundaries even as our bond grew. Scout would never be a pet. He was a wild animal with wild instincts, but he could be a partner in education and conservation. When the day came for the mother coyote's release, I transported her back to the canyon area where she'd been trapped. Scout rode in a separate crate, understanding somehow that this was goodbye. We released her at dawn, the desert cool and painted in rose and gold. She emerged from the crate cautiously, tested her healed leg, then stood strong. Scout watched from my arms, making soft sounds I couldn't interpret. His mother looked at him for a long moment, then at me. I'd like to think there was understanding in her eyes, gratitude maybe, though my scientific training warned against anthropomorphizing. She turned and loped into the desert, her gait strong despite the ordeal she'd survived. Scout whined once, pressing his head against my chest. The following months transformed my research and my life in ways I couldn't have imagined. Scout became my constant companion, accompanying me on field surveys where his presence helped me observe wildlife behavior with new insights. His intelligence continued to astound me. He learned commands quickly, understood complex situations, and displayed problem-solving abilities that enriched my research immeasurably. But more importantly, he became the heart of my educational outreach programs. Schools, community groups, and conservation organizations invited us to speak about predator intelligence, human-wildlife coexistence, and the illegal trapping problem that had nearly killed Scout's mother. Watching children's faces light up when they saw Scout, hearing their questions shift from fear to fascination, I understood the power of personal connection in conservation education. Scout was living proof that predators weren't monsters, but intelligent beings worthy of protection and respect. My relationship with Scout taught me things no textbook could. About trust that crosses species boundaries, about communication that transcends language, about the profound connections possible when we allow ourselves to truly see another being. Every morning, Scout greeted me with enthusiasm that never faded. Every evening, he curled beside me while I worked, a warm presence that had filled a loneliness I hadn't fully acknowledged. My colleagues occasionally questioned my decision, suggesting I'd compromised my objectivity. Perhaps I had, but objectivity had never saved anyone, and Scout had taught me that sometimes the most important work happens not in data collection, but in bearing witness to individual lives. 2 years after that October morning, I hiked back to the canyon where everything had begun. Scout walked beside me, no longer a clumsy pup, but a magnificent young adult, his coat thick and healthy, his confidence evident. We reached the spot where I'd found his mother trapped. I'd marked it on my GPS, returning periodically to check for illegal traps and to remember. Scout sniffed the area intently, then sat and looked up at me. I knelt beside him, wrapping my arms around his thick ruff. I told him what I told him often, that he'd saved his mother's life, that his bravery had broken my heart and healed it simultaneously, that he'd taught me more about courage and love than 2 decades of research ever had. In the distance, I caught movement. A coyote, adult, female, watching us from a ridge. She stood there for a long moment before turning and disappearing into the desert. I couldn't be certain, but something in my heart believed it was Scout's mother, healthy, surviving, perhaps checking on the pup she'd had to leave behind. Scout saw her too. He didn't chase or call out. He simply watched until she vanished, then leaned against me, content. We sat together in the desert I'd studied for decades, but which Scout had taught me to truly see. The data and research would continue, but this experience had reminded me that sometimes the most important discoveries can't be measured or quantified. Sometimes they arrive in the form of a desperate pup who refuses to give up, who demands to be seen, who trusts against all odds that compassion exists in the world. Scout had found that compassion and had changed my life forever. I was grateful every single day.